Hello, BookTube. As you may have noticed on Peg the Book Prize Addicts channel or in your open news feed today was the announcement of the winners of the 2018 Pulitzer Prize in a whole bunch of categories. And of course, because this, as has been said rightly elsewhere, is the Oscars of my profession, I was glued to the screen watching to see who would rack up awards, big and small. And I found the mix absolutely fascinating. Andy Dominic of the Des Moines Register won for editorial writing, and Jerry Saltz of New Yorker Magazine won for art criticism, which I didn't see coming at all. Needless to say, I had a different candidate for criticism, but there's always next year. And I wanted to go straight to the categories that matter here on BookTube, which is the arts, specifically the written arts, and I was amazed by some of these choices. And they have in common, good or bad, one characteristic, which is near misses. Because the Pulitzer publishers, they announced the winner, but they also published the finalists who came close to winning and maybe lost by a vote or two. And because of that, when I look at the list online as opposed to hearing it on YouTube, I get a sense of near misses. This was a near miss year, not only for criticism, where I had a candidate who I wish had won and didn't, but also for all of the categories that matter here on BookTube. There was one bullseye, and it was a surprise to me. The fiction winner was Less by Andrew Sean Greer, which I think we saw on this channel, and which I rated as one of the best books of 2017, and really, really loved. It's a fantastic book. Not only hugely intelligently written, but also very funny. Legitimately funny. And to say the least, I wasn't expecting it to win. It has absolutely no buzzwords, no bandwagons. It has no value for virtue signaling. And I guess I've gotten so accustomed to seeing all of that in awards that I've just come to expect it. I've just come to expect it. And this is a very good kind of shock to me. And it makes me cheer for the Pulitzers all the more. The finalists for fiction were In the Distance by Hernan Diaz and The Idiot by Elif Bachman. And in another year, I could easily have imagined myself giving a Nobel-style rant if The Idiot had won. But no, instead it went to Less, an academic writing novel by a white man. I couldn't be happier, not for that fact, but for the book. The book really deserves this spotlight, which will now be thrown on it, because it's not only weighty, inquisitive fiction, but it's also very enjoyable to read, which is a subject, the crossovers, distinctions, and gap between literary fiction and commercial fiction is a subject that's come up on BookTube recently. Well, here you go. Here's a perfect illustration of a book that is both. So I'm very happy that it won. And then I confess this year, as most years, drama, The Cost of Living by Martiana Mejock, I don't know at all, nor do I know either of the finalists. I confess that's a blind spot on my part. I don't read drama, mainly because I don't see it anymore. So I don't feel invested in it. I don't feel invested in that world. I myself, I don't know about the rest of you, but I myself have never really enjoyed reading plays. I mainly enjoyed reading plays as an echo of having seen them. And I don't go to any theater anymore. I just stopped completely doing that. When I lived in New York, I did. When I lived in Austin, I did. And here in Boston, I have often, but not anymore, not for years. But when it comes to history, of course, history and biography are my own stomping grounds. And I was amazed that Jack Davis's The Gulf, he wrote the book The Gulf, about the Gulf of Mexico, which I think we saw on this channel. I was amazed that it won. I reviewed it for Open Letters. I loved it, thought it was really good. But again, when you look at near misses, in this case, the near misses are a little hair-raising, because the other two finalists are Kim Phillips Fine's Fear City, New York's Fiscal Crisis and the Rise of Austerity Politics, and Hitler in Los Angeles by Stephen Ross. And I've read both of those. And if those are the three finalists, there's no comparison. The Gulf is far more ambitious and far more readable than either of the other two. But they were finalists. So it's like with less, they came close to winning. And that also is true in the biography category, only it's a little more painful for me. The winner was Carolyn Fraser's Prairie Fires, her biography of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I could kick myself. I pushed for it to review it in a number of venues, including a couple of venues that won Pulitzers this time around, and couldn't convince anybody either to let me do it or to do it at all. And and because of that, I sort of let it fall, even though I thought it was impressive. But nevertheless, as impressive as I thought it was, in this case, the near miss works against the winner because the two runners-up were John Farrell's Life of Richard Nixon and K. Redfield Jamison's fantastic biography of Robert Lowell. And both of those books were stronger than Prairie Fires. But even so, well, as far as complaints go, that's a pretty good one to have, right? Because all three are fantastic. And that doesn't usually happen in a year. So I'm tremendously pleased by that. And it's going to be so much fun. I hope that the publishers, the paperback releases for the Robert Lowell and the Richard Nixon, go the route of putting a little notation saying that they were Pulitzer finalists. I mean, it's announced on the website. I've always thought, mentioning that you're a Pulitzer finalist is a little on the tawdry side. You either won or you didn't win. But nevertheless, if it'll help those two books, all three of these books deserve as wide an audience as possible. So if that notation will help, fine. And of course, the big gold circle on Prairie Fires will help it enormously. And then we have poetry, which of course I don't know much about poetry. Frank Berdart's big collected thing won, and it was lovely to look at and confusing as all hell to read. I didn't understand any of the poetry that I read, and of course I couldn't bring myself to try and review it. But I did get it. I did read it, and I don't think I even thought that it was a candidate to win. But then there's the candidate of the category of general nonfiction. And the winner was Locking Up Our Own by James Forman. And this is another near miss type thing because the runners up were Notes on a Foreign Country by Susie Hansen, but also Richard Prumm's The Evolution of Beauty, which I would love to have seen win. It's the Evolution of Beauty. I think we saw it on this channel. It's a fantastic book. It's stuck with me in a way that Locking Up Our Own and Notes on a Foreign Country have not, about the role that soft, quote-unquote, cognitive factors play in Darwinian evolution, which we are raised and taught to think is all about, nature tooth and claw, red in tooth and claw, that natural selection favors adaptations designed to claw survival out of a harsh and brutal world. Practical stuff, in other words. And The Evolution of Beauty is all about how that's only part of the equation, and it's also only part of Darwin's thinking. That Darwin himself actually spent a lot of time thinking about what happens when organisms are advanced enough so that random chance or raw practicality are not the only reasons why they mate. What happens when there's judgment involved, aesthetics involved, when there's choice involved? The book has stuck with me because it's so fascinating. But again, it's a finalist, so its publicist for The Evolution of Beauty is already out in paperback, I believe, and the paperback is much prettier than the original hardcover was, ironically enough. But maybe a second printing. If I were the publisher, I would probably risk a second printing just to put that announcement on it and give it another chance. And then there's music, which it's someone named Kendrick Lamar. Sounds like a character in Game of Thrones. Of course, I wouldn't know anyway, because the Pointer Sisters aren't in the running anymore. I don't know music whatsoever. But the main point, the takeaway point that I wanted to make from our categories, of course, I have all sorts of emailing to do for the journalistic side. Some of the journalism winners are people whose newspaper or whose own work I have known and commented on, and one of them I've known personally, and they deserve all the falterall that you can make of them, even Ronan Farrow, I'm willing to give him his day in the sun. He's insufferably arrogant and narcissistic as it is, as 5 foot tall people tend to be. But it's not every day you win the Pulitzer. And he's one of the people on the journalistic side that got named, whose name, it wasn't just the staff of the New Yorker, it was him specifically. So I'm happy to give him his day in the sun. Good for him. And Lord knows his reporting was spot on about scandals. And the Pulitzer's overall statement was also spot on, that this is important. That in 2018, in 2017, when all of this journalistic work was done, a free and inquiring press has never been more important in our lifetimes, and only 2 or 3 other times in the history of the country has it been this important. The Pulitzers have a right to consider themselves not only embattled but important this year. So I was very happy to see not only so many strong winners for telling truth to power, but also that the wins on the journalistic side were spread out. It wasn't just the biggest newspapers that won. There were some smaller outfits that did great groundwork. So that's my provisional report on the Pulitzer Prize. I mainly stuck to the areas that we know so well here on BookTube, and I just want to finish up by recommending to you. I'm not sure. I don't know whether or not Less is in paperback in bookstores, but if it is, you should give it a try. And when it comes out, it's difficult to describe the full ambit of what the author does, but it is smart and funny, and it has at its heart a completely hapless and disorganized, clueless hero that you'll root for. It's identifiable. There are no narrative, rhetorical, or linguistic, fireworks. There are quotation marks. there are no weird dashes. No one dies of a heroin overdose. The narrative is chronological. The prose can be funny. The situations are real, but also slightly exaggerated. It is, in other words, normal fiction. So I think it's fascinating. Like I said, I think it's fascinating that right now, right when BookTube is in the midst of talking about commercial versus literary fiction, that this should be the winner of one of the foremost literary prizes in the world. But anyway, I'm gonna sign off for now. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents worth about the Pulitzers, but I'll be back with plenty of other stuff. Thank you, BookTube.